Every story has a moral. In this story, the moral is a caution, a warning to all those who love. Beware how you give your heart. Kate Hawthorne and Peter Whiteley gave each other their hearts. In the night, they became secretly engaged. They clasped each other's hands, and they vowed to always love each other. They promised each other their hearts. As a token of their love, they each gave each other one item. Peter gave her a magnificent golden ring. "Take my ring," he said. "Keep it with you always, so my heart can be with you always." Kate had no ring. She had no jewelry of any kind. All she had was a beautiful golden mirror. Red rubies adorned the back against intricate swirling patterns of gold. She handed it to Peter. "Take my mirror, and know that you have also taken my heart." It seemed innocent enough, childish even. But neither Kate nor Peter could ever have imagined what would now befall them because of what they had just done. Time passed. The engagement remained a secret. At first, it was thrilling, sneaking love notes to each other and meeting each other in the dead of night without anyone knowing. But time passed. And after a year's time, things changed. After a year, Kate had grown up, and with her had grown a love for luxury and the finer things of the world. In a year's time, Kate was no longer in love with Peter Whiteley. Instead, she had fallen in love with Richard MacArthur's money. Richard was a wealthy man, one of the wealthiest in town. He fell instantly in love with Kate's beauty, and she obviously was smitten with his money. So, a week after their first meeting, the two announced their wedding. Peter, of course, was devastated. He wrote notes to Kate, trying to remind her of her promise to him, but she would not listen, and she would not reply. Then, on the night before her wedding to Richard MacArthur, Kate received one final letter from Peter. She was in her drawing room when she read it, next to the fireplace. It read, "Dear Kate, your heart has grown dark and withered. It is no longer the young, beautiful heart I once knew, but the heart of a monster. My heart still remains yours. But know this, you have broken it." With disgust, Kate crumpled the letter in her hand and she threw it into the fire, where it withered in the flames. Then she wrote her own letter to Peter. Sitting at her desk, she wrote a short note. "Dear Peter, I am sorry to hear that your heart was so weak that you allowed it to be broken. I am happy to say that my heart remains whole and untarnished from my childish love affair with you. Perhaps you would do better to become someone like me, someone whose heart will never break." She was about to send the letter off when she remembered. The ring. Peter's ring. It was still upstairs in her room. She dashed up the stairs, she opened one of her drawers, and she fetched it out of the bottom of her drawer. She ran back downstairs, and she was about to put it in the envelope with the letter to send back to Peter, when she noticed something. Running down the length of the ring was a thin, long crack. The ring was broken. For some reason Kate could not explain, the crack in the ring made her furious, and with an angry cry she hurled it into the fire. There it sat, smoke reflected in its golden band. Kate smiled with satisfaction as she watched the ring slowly begin to lose its shape. But her pleasure turned to horror as she realized the ring was not melting gold, Instead, a thick red liquid bubbled from it. It trickled down the logs of the fire, cascading down the grate, and one single drop splattered to the hearth. The ring was melting blood. With a sick feeling inside, Kate drew back. She covered her face with her hands. And when she looked back, the ring was gone. And there was no sign of the red liquid at all. Perhaps the flames had played tricks on her eyes. Kate tried to forget the whole thing. She went to bed that night. But she slept restlessly, and in the morning she was in a terrible state. Still, she had her wedding to think about. She got ready quickly. And in just a few hours' time, she became the wife of Richard MacArthur. After the wedding, Richard and Kate left the church. They climbed into a beautiful white carriage drawn by 2 white horses and went down the road to Richard's estate. Partway down the road, they suddenly came to a small procession of people, all wearing black, headed toward the cemetery. They stopped alongside one of the men in the procession. Richard asked him, "What is going on here?" The man did not look at him. "My nephew is dead," he said. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry," said Kate. "Well, who was he?" The man looked at Kate, his face as white and sallow as death itself. His name was Peter Whiteley. Peter Whiteley. Kate's blood ran cold. How did he die? No one knows. He died just this last night. Just this last night. Kate's mind filled with the memory of the bleeding ring. But that couldn't possibly have had anything to do with Peter's death, could it? Her heart raced, and she decided it was time to proceed on their way to Richard's estate. Once there, to Richard's house, she felt much better. She hurried up the stairs and looked at her new quarters. In one corner of the room was an elegant bed. In another corner was a welcoming fireplace and a small dressing table. On the dressing table was a brown paper package, no doubt from a well-wisher. Kate went over to the package. She opened it eagerly. "What is it, my dear?" Richard had just come up the stairs. "Why, it's my old mirror." Indeed, it was. It was the same mirror she had given to Peter all that time ago. Now it was Kate's once more. Oh, how she loved her mirror. She turned it over to see her reflection. "What is it, my dear?" "Nothing. Nothing at all, dear. I merely scratched myself on the mirror." But that was not the truth at all. When Kate had looked into the mirror, it was not her beautiful reflection she saw. Instead, she had seen the face of a hideous black monster with white, sightless eyes staring back at her. A creature so repulsive that Kate feared ever touching the mirror again. That night she slept fitfully. She tossed and she turned, images of the monster in her mind. And Peter Whiteley's letter echoing through her mind. "Your heart has grown dark and withered. It is not the young, beautiful heart I once knew, but the heart of a monster." The next morning, Kate awoke. She walked to the dressing table. She took the mirror in her hand. She raised it high above her head, and she brought it down with a mighty crack. Richard shot up out of bed. "What on earth has happened?" "Nothing, dear. I merely broke my mirror." She turned it over with satisfaction to look at the broken glass on the other side. But to her dismay, the mirror was not broken. And that creature still looked up out of the mirror at her. She hurled it at the opposite wall from her. It clattered to the floor, unbroken and unbent. Why wouldn't it break? And then her own letter, her own final letter to Peter, ran through her mind, echoing like 1,000 voices. Perhaps you would do better to be someone like me, someone whose heart will never break. And Kate understood. Richard got out of bed. He approached the mirror. Darling, what? Don't touch it! Kate walked to the mirror. She carefully picked it up and walked back to the dressing table. I want a box made, a strong metal box with velvet lining the inside. Richard was a bit bewildered. How large, my dear? Just the right size for a mirror. The box was made just as Kate requested. The mirror was placed inside and kept on the dressing table so that Kate could always see it. She grew obsessed with it. She'd sit in their room. She'd stare at it. Her eyes became bloodshot. Her black hair, once beautiful, became a matted mass on her head. Richard tried to get rid of it, but every time he approached the mirror, Kate would scream at him, telling him not to touch it. Well, a month went by, exactly 1 month after their marriage. And that was when Richard could take it no longer. He waited until Kate had fell asleep in a fitful slumber, and he crept out of bed. He walked noiselessly to the dressing table. He opened the metal box and took the mirror from its depths. The red rubies glinted in the dark as he crept noiselessly to the fireplace. Richard, what are you doing? Kate had awoken. She was up in bed. She was looking from Richard to the mirror, her face stricken and white. Richard gazed back at her. It is for your own good. And he hurled the mirror into the fire. What have you done? Shrieked Kate. She ran to the fire, but she suddenly stopped. And with a trembling finger, she pointed to the flames. Richard turned. At first he saw just the mirror, the flames licking its golden edges. But then he saw, seeping from the center of the mirror, a dark red liquid. Dark crimson drops dripped down the logs of the fire, cascading down the grate and mingling with the ashes. The mirror was bleeding. Just as Richard realized this, he heard Kate slump to the floor behind him. He ran to her, but it was too late. Kate Hawthorne was dead, with one hand clutching at her heart, as though it had begun to bleed.